There is a specific kind of vertigo that has nothing to do with heights. It arrives in an ordinary moment, sitting still or just before sleep. The realization, not thought but felt, that nothing outside you is determining who you are. No purpose assigned before you arrived, just you, with the full and terrible weight of being the only one responsible for what happens next. That feeling has a name. A philosopher who sat in occupied Paris in the early 1940s, writing in cafes while the city was under military control, surrounded by people making impossible choices about collaboration and resistance and survival, looked at the human condition and arrived at a conclusion that disturbed him as much as anyone. Not that life was meaningless, that it was radically, inescapably free, and that the freedom was not a gift. He called the feeling it produced nausea, not because it was irrational, because it was the correct response to seeing things as they actually are. For centuries, the assumption ran in one direction. Humans carried a fixed nature, a soul, an essence granted before birth by God or biology, or the structure of the cosmos. The purpose came first. The life was the fulfillment of it. This assumption was so deep, it rarely needed to be stated. It was the ground that everything else stood on. Sartre removed the ground. A knife is made with a purpose already decided. The idea of the knife exists before the knife does. The essence precedes the existence. For centuries, people assumed humans work the same way. Sartre said, "Look again. A human being arrives first, existing before any essence has been established, before any purpose has been assigned. The existence comes first. The essence is built afterward, through every choice made, every action taken, every moment of response to the situation the person finds themselves inside. You are not born as something. You become something, through the accumulated weight of what you do." The implication follows immediately, and there is no comfortable way to land it. If the essence is built through choice, then upbringing, genetics, circumstance, and culture are the situation, not the explanation. They describe the conditions inside which the choices were made. They do not make the choices. The person raised in a particular environment, shaped by particular experiences, carrying particular inherited tendencies, still responded to all of that. The response was a choice, even in moments that felt like pure reaction, even in moments where the options seemed so constrained that choosing felt like the wrong word for what was happening. Even the choice to accept the situation without resistance is a choice. This is where most people stop and look for the exit, and the exit has a name. He called it bad faith, the lie told to the self, quietly and persistently, that the choice did not exist. The waiter who moves through his shift with a particular mechanical precision, inhabiting the role so completely that the role appears to be the only thing that is there, telling himself through every gesture that this is simply what a waiter is, that the behavior is required by the position rather than chosen moment by moment. The person who explains that they cannot leave their situation because of obligations to family, performing the inability, rather than acknowledging that staying is a decision being made continuously, every day, by someone who could decide differently. Bad faith is not stupidity. It is the intelligent management of an unbearable weight. The contemporary versions are harder to see because they are more internally sophisticated. The person who has been in a relationship they resent for 3 years, not because leaving is impossible, but because they have constructed an identity around being the kind of person who does not abandon commitments. And leaving would require dismantling not just the relationship, but the story of the self that the relationship is propping up. The career maintained for a decade, on the unexamined premise that the window for doing something different closed years ago. A premise that has never been tested, because testing it would make the choice visible, and visible choices carry weight that invisible ones do not. The most sophisticated version reaches for the language of science, the explanation of the self through psychological or neurological structure. I respond this way because of my attachment style. I cannot change this because of how my brain is wired. I am this way because of what happened early enough to be formative. All of this can be entirely accurate as description and entirely irrelevant as excuse. Because the attachment style, the neural pattern, the early formation, these describe the situation. They do not make the choice of what to do with the situation. That choice remains, sitting in the space between the description and the next action, waiting for someone to either take it or pretend it is not there. Now understand where the nausea actually comes from. Total freedom means total authorship. If no external structure determines who you are or what you should do, then there is no one to share the responsibility for who you became. The self, looking back at the life it is living, is looking at something it built, through every choice made and every choice avoided, through every moment of genuine decision and every moment of bad faith that disguised a decision as an inevitability. The authorship is complete, and there is no one else to put on the cover. But there is a dimension to this that Sartre identified that most people never follow all the way, and it is the most unsettling part. The moment another person perceives you, something happens that you cannot control and cannot undo. You become an object inside their world, not in a dehumanizing sense, but in a structural one. Their consciousness organizes its experience of reality, and you are inside that organization, classified, interpreted, assigned meaning by a perspective that is not yours and that you cannot inhabit or fully influence. You were the author of your own meaning. The look of the other reveals that you are simultaneously a character inside someone else's story, shaped by their freedom rather than your own. This does not take your freedom away. It complicates it in a direction that has no clean resolution. You are free, and you are simultaneously being made into an object by the freedom of everyone around you. The two conditions exist at the same time. There is no position outside both of them available. What other people see when they look at you is real, and it is not you, and you cannot stop them from seeing it, and you cannot fully see what they are seeing. The self that is free to create its own essence is also permanently exposed to being defined by essences it did not choose and cannot revoke. He compressed all of this into a single phrase that carries more weight the longer it is held. Condemned to be free, not given freedom, not blessed with it. Condemned. You did not choose to exist. You did not choose to arrive into consciousness, already faced with the necessity of making choices. You did not choose to be the kind of thing that cannot not choose. And yet here you are, with no instruction manual specifying what the choices should be, no exit from the responsibility of making them, no authority outside yourself that can take the weight off by telling you what the right ones are, and no shelter from the fact that while you are busy authoring your own meaning, everyone around you is authoring a version of you that you will never fully see or control. Here is where this ends, and it does not end with comfort. Every time you say, "I had no choice," you are describing something that is not true. You had a choice. You made it. The circumstances were real. The constraints were real. The pressure was real. And the choice was still real. And the choice was yours. The question was never whether freedom existed. It always did. The question is whether the choice made in any given moment is one that can be owned completely, without appeal to circumstance, without the management of bad faith to make the weight bearable. Not every choice will survive that kind of looking. That is the point. The ones that do are the ones that were actually yours.